Buzz, when was the last time you were actually here at Bryan Air Force Base?
I've been thinking about that. I guess in my mind, a number of times. I give talks every so often, and I see a picture of my father and me in a T-33, and he's sitting in the back, and I'm sitting in the front. And I have to tell the audience that I just got my wings. You don't think they were going to let me take up an aviation pioneer in the back seat. This is a photo op. That's where I got my wings.
When were you here? When were you a student pilot here at Bryan Air Force Base?
Well, I graduated West Point, class of 1951. So they changed it the last month, year. I was going to report to Perrin Air Force, Sherman, Texas, but that was changed to a contract base that was used during World War II in Bartow, Florida, between Orlando and Lakeland and Tampa. And so that's where I learned to fly with a few other student officers from the Netherlands, from Italy, from the Naval Academy, and along with me from West Point, but other ROTC graduates and a number of aviation cadets from different places. So it was quite a mixture. And I remember arriving here and seeing those jet T-33s flying over. And we've been flying those World War II Harvards, they're called in England, but a T6 yellow tail dragger. It was a good airplane to learn. It was the third level in World War II, but it was the first level getting ready for the Korean War. And so then I came here probably, January of 52, maybe.
So what do you remember about your time here as a lieutenant learning to fly jets at Bryan Air Force Base?
We had student officers from West Point, Annapolis, ROTC, foreign, and lots of aviation cadets from different places. So they were all mixed together. And when I come on the base, the T-33s went over, and that's going to be it. Of course, I'd seen B-17s and all sorts of other fighters and bombers, but this was one I was going to get in, and it was noisy and kind of smooth and beautiful. And so we started out in T-28s. And we called that Maytag Mustang because it pop, pop, pop like a P-51, and it looked a good bit like it, but it was kind of noisy. So Mustang was the P-51, but this made noise like a Maytag washing machine, I guess.
In fact, you had an episode in your book, Return to Earth,
Yeah.
you talk about graying out in one of those T-28s. Do you still remember?
Well, I knew enough. My father was a companion, sort of Jimmy Doolittle. Now, Jimmy Doolittle was famous for making an outside loop, which means you go over like this. Boy, that's a lot of negative G. But I learned that, you could make an Immelman, and on the top, there was such a thing as a double Immelman. So you pull up, and you go, and you pull up and do another time. Well, you got to get going pretty fast to do that, and then you got to pull back on the stick. And this is what I did in the T-38, and I'm going up like this. That's the last I remember. I mean, I'm asleep. I'm out. Next thing I know, I'm heading for Texas. And I got something in this hand and something in this hand, and I had the presents to kind of ease back on both of them. And, you think you'd learn from that, but later on, after the Korean War, I go through the fighter weapons school at Nellis in Las Vegas, and we've been instructing, and now we're going to be really hot shot. The Navy call it Top Gun, and they have female instructors, and Tom Cruise. Well, ours was just shooting gunnery and taking academics. But to start off, since I was based there, I didn't have to fill some squares, so they said, well, here, take a clean F-86. That means nothing's hanging from it, and just go flying, we'll fill in the squares. That was too much of a temptation. I'm going to do that double implement. So I get up pretty high now and dive down and yank back on the stick. Something snaps in my neck. And so I ease over like this. Oh man, that hurt. And I was going through my mind, if I can ever get this on the ground, they're going to have to come out with a crane and lift me up. Well, it wasn't really that bad, but I was a little stiff-necked for a while.
There were 3 of you in your astronaut classes,
Yes.
yourself and Charlie Bassett and
Yeah.
Ted Freeman.
Right.
All came through Bryan Air Force
Sure.
Base. And of course, Ted and Charlie were both killed
Yeah,
in T-38.
they were in the same group I was in.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about them. We don't know a whole lot about
Mm-hmm.
them. So what do you remember about Ted and Charlie?
I remember that there's a nice photograph of the Zero-G airplane, and the 3 of us are kind of flying like that. Just the 3, Ted, Charlie, and myself. Ted was one of the first ones to fly in a T-38. And unfortunately, a bird flying the wrong way, so he crashed coming into land. And Charlie Bassett was my backdoor neighbor. My wife got along with Jeannie quite well and the kids. So he had a very sharp test pilot scheduled to do the very difficult number 1 Air Force experiment, this maneuvering unit. But in the snowstorm, turning final, they lost sight of the horizon and crashed right into the building that had their spacecraft in it. Jim Lovell and I were backing up Gemini 10, so there's a crew to 11 and 12, so we'd become the prime crew on 13, but there wasn't any. So Jim and I come down, and we back up Gemini 9, so now when it flies, they've got a crew for 10 and 11, so Jim and I are going to fly on Gemini 12. And that's where the EVAs were not going well, so I got into neutral buoyancy, and that worked out real fine. And so I'm kind of waiting around, and now some things happened early in the Apollo program, very drastic. The first crew was killed in the, we call it the Apollo fire at the Cape. Now, Jim Lovell and I were returning from a speaking engagement, and we got down from the airplane. The crew chief came up and said, we lost the Apollo 1 crew. Now, Ed White was my closest friend, 1 year behind me at West Point. And he's the one that really kind of egged me into thinking about it, because he'd gone through Michigan, get a master's, test pilot school, and he calls me on the phone. I'm at MIT. He says, Buzz, they want to get another group of astronauts, and I'm qualified, I'm testing it, so I'm going to apply. So I said, well, that's great, Ed, but you and I were on the NATO gunnery competition. I can shoot gunnery better than you. So I'm doing some interesting stuff in Rendezvous, so I think I'll apply too. Well, he picked him and not me, that now, after persistence, which included going down to Houston and talking to Gus Grissom, who was going to fly on the first Gemini flight with John Young, and I was trying to let him know what I knew about Rendezvous. Well, now at that stage of the game, Rendezvous didn't impress him that much. This hotshot egghead coming, oh yeah, he's in the Air Force, that's good. I don't remember at the time that he had gone through pilot training here at Bryan.
Actually, he was an instructor.
I know.
He came here after
Yeah.
his stint in the Korean War
Yeah.
and was an instructor pilot here for about a year, yeah.
But didn't instruct me. Might have.
What kind of a guy was Gus?
Very, very humorous guy, kind of dry humor, but pretty direct and right to the point. And he was one of the people to really study and fly the first flight. That is what I'm sure qualified him in the Apollo program to be scheduled to fly the first flight. So he and my friend Ed White and Roger Chaffee and the third group were killed in the fire. And that kind of shuffled up the Apollo program. The lander was not quite ready for the second Apollo mission, so that crew shifted to become the third, and Jim Lovell and Neil Armstrong and I were back up on the third. So now we moved to be back up on the second, which is going to be Earth orbit without a lander, but because the Russians looked like they might fly, well, they were flying unmanned around the moon, they might fly a cosmonaut and do the same thing, why this accelerated that Apollo 8 mission to pretty soon go all the way to the moon and orbit the moon, not just fly around it. The first flight on the big Saturn V. A really kingpin of a decision to accomplish so much in that first mission. And to be on the backup crew with Neil, we really worked close together on that. But of course, the good thing was that now we would get to watch the lander fly on 9 and a dress rehearsal on 10, and then the rotation being right, the wise thing was to bring Mike Collins back in because he'd been taken off and Jim Lovell took his place on 8. So that was our crew. And we began to contemplate, this is liable to be a great opportunity for us. What is the significance of Americans being the first, the opening? And I've always been interested in symbology. The yin and the yang, that what kind of opening up of horizons? Well, we ended up getting very practical because we had decided that our call signs, Neil and I decided we would be Eagle. And then Mike got to choose his call sign of Columbia. So we started off Apollo 11, and we get separated, and the eagle has wings. That's Neil's words. And Columbia then we get around, we land, and Houston, Tranquility Base, the Eagle has landed. Tranquility Base, where'd that come from? Well, the three of us decided that it wasn't going to just be Eagle on the surface, that we would become some different title of where we were. But Neil, of course, had the honor of doing these pronouncements, and first symbolic person, small step for man, giant leap for mankind. And then we get back in again, track in some dust, and had a little problem with the broken circuit breaker, but we worked that one out somehow. And we're cleared. So we went with the countdown. And of course, I know what's going to happen back in mission control. The flight director is going to be polling the different people. And when he gets all of them go flight, he's going to say, Capcom, we're go for liftoff. At Capcom, he's an astronaut always. So the Capcom says, Tranquility Base, you're cleared for liftoff. Okay, now it's my turn. I thought about it a little bit. I didn't write it down. I said, Roger, Houston, we're number one on the runway. Well, there wasn't anybody else up there. We had to be the first. And sure, there wasn't any runway. We were sitting there in the dust.
So those were the last words spoken while you were on the moon? So Neil got the first words. Did you get the last?
Well, they got technical about it. I had the first also, because when we touched down, there's a little light that comes on, because a micro switch. And when it comes on, I say, contact light, engine stop. Neil's supposed to stop the engine. And then there are a few other things so those were the first words, not the symbolic.
Rellis is going to become an academic institution.
Sure.
Kids are going to come to school out here. I've read a copy of your last book, There's No Dream Too High. What advice would you give young students preparing for their future?
I guess that title says something. Don't just settle for the steady. Look at what the possibilities are. And I've used this example, stretch your arms out, go through. You're going to reject a lot of things. You're going to accept some. Just dream a little bit. But when you do start looking at alternatives, and that's what you should be doing, and like being optimistic, don't give up. You keep hearing that, but some good things will happen, hopefully. If they don't get too discouraged. Look for the next opportunity. Things will get better if you're in the right business, if you pick the right thing that's growing. And if somehow you didn't, get out and get into something else.